Hello everyone, Miles here from Tech Circus with another exciting introductory talk with one of our speakers for the upcoming Metaverse Day on the 24th and 25th of January, taking place online. Very excited for this event and all of the content that's going to come from it. And today I'm joined by Richard Bartle, one of the early pioneers of virtual games and virtual worlds. So Richard, introduce yourself and tell us a bit more about your background in the field of virtual worlds and MMORPGs. Maybe also break down what that means for people.
Right, okay. So I'm Richard Bartle, Honorary Professor of Computer Game Design at the University of Essex. And when I was an undergraduate at the University of Essex, way back in the second half of the 1900s, I and a fellow undergraduate, Roy Trubshaw, co-wrote the first virtual world, which was called MUD, standing for Multi-User Dungeon. This was text-based. People played it, liked it. Some of them changed it, added new things. Over time, people saw those. The idea evolved. People took it up. After a while, graphics got good enough that we could have 3D-looking worlds on a flat screen. After a while, we got ones that you could look 3D because they really are 3D. You look at them through the goggles. And now we're at where we are today with virtual worlds are they're the foundations of the metaverse. So that's very briefly what my background is.
Amazing, lovely and succinct. And now I'm going to dig in a little deeper onto some of these topics, if you don't mind, Richard. Talking about what early virtual worlds were. So you're obviously widely recognized as one of these pioneers in the space, co-created, I'd say, MUD. What were some of the inspirations? So why did you develop MUD, and talk through some of those kind of key challenges and the opportunities in creating these early virtual worlds?
Well, there was no inspiration. It's not like we could look at something that hadn't been invented and think, whoa, I'm going to invent something just like that thing that hasn't been invented. No, virtual worlds, like all computer games, game design is an art form, and we created MUD to say something. And what we basically wanted to say was the real world, reality, sucks. We could make a better world than this one. So we set off to do just that. Now, the thing is that we had a DEC System 10 mainframe to play with because we were undergraduates at Essex University. And it wasn't really powerful enough to do quite what we wanted. There's more bits in the image you're seeing of me on the screen than we had for the entire game. So, it wasn't that big, but we could create a very large world. It was text-based, which made it easier because all the pictures were in players' imaginations. And from there, we were able to tell people, look, by being somebody else, you can be and become yourself. In the real world, there's all kinds of pressures on you, social pressures, family pressures, educational pressures, girlfriend pressures, boyfriend pressures, looking after your cat pressures. There's so many things coming at you, and you don't get to be who you are. But in a world where you can reinvent yourself, you can be, and that's pretty well what we were doing. It had quite a bit to say about the British class system as well, but let's not get into that here.
Dangerous ground, yeah. So, I mean, I've got an interesting question. You were creating this back in the late 70s, right? And the technology constraints were huge by comparison, right? You don't think about it at the time. How do you think you might have approached the design and development of the game differently now if you were to recreate it with today's technology?
Well, I couldn't because I'd need $25 million, and I don't have $25 million, so I couldn't do it today. Otherwise, I would be doing it today, and I will do it if someone gives me $25 million. Although I'd probably procrastinate and spend it on holidays instead. But the thing is that back then, two people could create a virtual world from scratch because Well, if you think about film, back in the day, in the early 1900s, with black and white silent movies, you didn't need a lot of people to make a black and white silent movie. Now today, if you want to make a blockbuster movie, you're going to cost you millions, going to cost you more millions just to publicize it. There's cast of hundreds, 15 minutes of credits at the end until you see the one amusing screen bit at the very back of it. Now, the thing is that film today and film when it first came out are clearly the same medium. Now, sure, there's a lot more techniques and things, and if you were really interested in color, then you wouldn't necessarily be interested in black and white. If you're interested in 3D movies where you put on the stereoscopic glasses, then you could say, well, that's completely different to the flat screen ones that we saw before. But movies are, 90% of a movie today is still what was learned back with the black and white movies. Yeah, all different kinds of tracking shots and things. And it's like this with virtual worlds. Today's virtual worlds, huge extravaganzas, but a lot of what goes into it goes into the interface, the visual appearance of it, the actual design, understanding and playing of the virtual world behind the scenes is pretty much the same as it was back in 1978. So it is with the metaverse. People think, oh, metaverse, yeah, it's a new thing. Oh, these are the things that are just games. We don't need to learn any of that. Throw them away. We can start something new and we can invent it from scratch. Well, once you start inventing it from scratch, you'll suddenly find that all the problems that have already been solved or have been identified as unsolvable are now your problems, and your arrogance has taken you further. There will be new things. You'll get new problems and new affordances and new things that'll be so much better than what we've had. But nevertheless, there are foundations that you need to learn, and these things come from an understanding of what went before them.
No, I think that's a great answer, and thanks for.
I managed to stop myself before I ranted too much.
Easily done, I think. I know you've got quite strong opinions on what the metaverse could look like, theories of interoperability and scalability and things like this, particularly on the interoperability side. But are there some lessons from the evolution of mud that you would say would be fundamental if people were building metaverse worlds today? Well,
the first core lesson is make sure you understand the history so that if you do repeat it, you're repeating the bits you want to repeat. We know that game worlds are not the same as social worlds. If you're building a metaverse, well, I shouldn't say a metaverse, it should be the metaverse. Otherwise, well, it's like talking about an internet, isn't it? If you want to have a platform on the metaverse that is a game platform, then there are things about it that no matter how much people want, you cannot have, because otherwise it ceases to be a game. As you mentioned, interoperability is one of those things. Persistent character identity is another one of those things. You don't want to be able to be the same character in every single game, whether you like it or not. You do want to be able to change things like that. So there are limits, but there are also opportunities. Other things we've found out is that although some of the metaverse flagship things, like it enables creativity, that's good. It does enable creativity. It would do that, but so does a piece of paper and a pencil. And not everybody can draw. Not everybody wants to draw. Some people want to consume rather than to produce. And not everything that everybody does create is actually impressive to anybody other than them and their immediate family. So merely saying that people can doesn't mean that they will. That's probably one of the big issues. If the people who do get into it will stay into it for a very, very long time. I mean, there are people who are still playing Second Life today who played it when it first came out. and they built their identity within there. But on the other hand, there's far more players who've tried it and thought, yeah, not really much to do, is there? So they've gone off and done something else where there's slightly more to do. So you can't always rely on hope. There needs to be something there. Games give you the something that's there, but not necessarily taking with it the things that you want to. Things like NFTs, which are have hitched themselves to the metaverse bandwagon, and the metaverse is now trying to unhitch them.
So what do you think the promise? What if you're not a creator? I mean, you've talked a little bit about creators, and there is something there for them, especially if they're talented creators, right? There's a space to be unshackled in your creativity and build something that people are going to want to engage with. What's the promise for the masses, for those who are consumers, which is going to be the vast majority of users, right?
Well, I'm not making the promises, am I? It's not for me to say what the promises are because I'm not building the metaverse. I can tell you what will happen if you promise things that can't deliver. There'll be a bubble and it'll burst, and then you'll be left with a rump of people who are very interested in it, very good at it, got things that they want to say through the metaverse, and there will be for sure applications that wouldn't work anywhere other than the metaverse, and that will bring things that are very important to the metaverse. But people aren't going to be wanting to spend their entire time in the metaverse. There are just too many other things that the non-metaverse does better. A book can deliver a better story than a movie. People do still read books. Sure, yeah, they also watch TikTok videos, but there's lots of things that you can that are open. It doesn't all have to be through a single platform with a single interface that's, frankly, at the moment, a little tedious to use.
And I think those bubble, you talked about the bubble, right? That will eventually burst. I mean, that life cycle of around the metaverse of like, it's here and then it bursts. It's happened before, right? It's like you talked about Second Life, but there's been other kind of metaverse.
Yeah. Well, it's not just, it's all technologies that are prematurely announced. The people who like the idea go in, and if it works, then they'll bring in more people. So with the internet, people who were using it were saying, this is good, look, come along. And yeah, everybody signs up to AOL and everything like that. And then they find that there is some substance behind the internet. What's the substance behind the metaverse? Well, what does the metaverse have that the internet and movies and TV and Spotify don't have? Well, what's the answer? And if it's interoperability, well, do I want interoperability? If it's 3D goggles, well, do I want to see the world in a virtual environment? Sure, I might want to sometimes, but not every time. So you can see the metaverse may be a particular branch of the internet, but you can't say simply because the metaverse is so realistic that people will love to be in it, that's going to draw them into it, because, well, reality is far more realistic than the metaverse ever is, and people want to escape that so they can listen to music and read books and play snooker. Well, mind you, that is probably reality, except not when I try it. Anyway, there's merely being persuasive and realistic isn't in itself enough to make something a permanent fixture in someone's life. But it could be a partial fixture for some of the time.
Any kind of key insights for people who are listening in today that they might gain from the session that you're going to be a part of, and what you would like to bring to that conversation?
Well, it depends which direction they're coming from. If they're coming from the direction of please tell me I'm doing the right thing, well, then it'll probably be you're on the right track, but I don't know if it's the right thing. If they're coming from the direction of the metaverse is the future for mankind, fight me, well, then I'll fight them, because it's as it's envisaged, it probably isn't the future of mankind. But we've got a lot of future. 500 years from now, 1,000 years, 500,000 years. I mean, how many years do you want? We've got them. So something will be around which will be, in effect, a reality that isn't the reality we live in, that you can visit and do things there. But nevertheless, reality always wins because it's the host. So whatever happens, reality is going to be there in the background. For people who are interested just in what the trajectory has been to get here and what's going to happen now, I'll be saying, well, at the moment things are in the doldrums because it's just too expensive to create these products. There's little experimentation. With little experimentation, there's little novelty. Little novelty means people who've tried the experience don't try it again. That will disappear once we get tools that help regular people so that two individuals can make a virtual world all on their own. Tools are coming, AI is helping, but the problem with tools, of course, is that if everybody's got the same tools, everybody makes the same things. So it does have a downside, but at least it's not a downside driven by fear of losing the $250 million you put into your virtual world design.
Yeah. I guess there's a message there then, coming back to the early point about reality, like we should be protecting reality, otherwise there won't be any opportunity for virtual worlds as well, right?
Yeah, well, yeah. Reality's going to outlast us, that's for sure. The world in which we live may or may not be going uphill or downhill, but it comes back to what Roy Trubshaw and I said we're doing at the beginning. The real world is in a mess. The real world, you don't get to the freedom to be yourself. You don't have any kind of freedom. You get an illusion of freedom. You get to play within the rigid boundaries that society set you, but you don't get to expand to become who you really are. And that's what a virtual world offers. That's what ideally a metaverse world would offer. But it's not what currently seen by the people who are evangelizing the metaverse.
I really appreciate those answers and quite philosophical, which is a direction it's always fun to go with these big amorphous topics. But I want to bring it back to something a bit more concrete in your own background, just to close out, because obviously you specialize in game design and something you're quite, and so I'd like to just close out with a little bit of a discussion around that, because you mentioned earlier player types. And obviously this is a rabbit hole I'm sure you could probably expand on for forever, but I'd love to get a bit of your insight on the concept of player types and how it's helped developers understand the design for different types of players, and how will that impact game environments in the metaverse and game platforms within the metaverse.
Right. Okay. So player types, when people design games, newbie designers design games that they personally want to play. They think, I don't like this game here. It would be so much better if it was like this. So they design the game like this. And now it's so much better and I like it. Now, there's nothing wrong with that. Everybody has to start off by looking at the old masters and figuring out what they did right, what they did wrong. So I'm not impugning newbie designers there. But if everybody's only creating games that only appeal to them, then they're not appealing to everybody else. Now, we found in the early days of Mud that people would follow particular ways of playing. And after a big discussion about 1990, so 12 years into it all, I came up with 4 different things that people who play virtual worlds for fun found fun. Those were achieving, so that's like playing it as a game, trying to win, getting all the points, going up levels so you can get more points to go up more levels. Exploration, which was exploring the game world, trying to figure out how it works, both in breadth and depth, so looking at the mechanics of the game. Then there was socializers who were there not so much for the game world as for the people within the world, and the game just provided a context whereby they could be themselves with other people. Then the final one was killers, and if I hadn't chosen the name killers, nobody would have paid any attention, but I did choose the name killers. Killers are the people, they're griefers, basically. Most of them are griefers. Some of them aren't. Some of them are politicians who are there to try to act on people in a positive way rather than a negative way. So those are the 4 player types. If you want to go into great detail, which we don't have time for, there's 8, each of those can be split into 2. We get 8 player types, but it doesn't really matter. Anyway, I produced this paper in 1996 about it, a few years later after I'd seen it working. And it was one of the very first game studies papers. And people looked at it and thought, oh, that actually makes sense. That's kind of, I can see those players in my game. We shouldn't be designing virtual worlds for achievers. We should be designing them for all these players because they all interact with it. And if you've only got a game with achievers, what happens is you've got the ones at the very top and the ones at the bottom, and the ones at the bottom can't get up because they're not as good as the ones at the top, so they stop playing. So now you've got a new bottom, and they fall away, and it keeps falling away and fraying until you've only got this core of people at the top. So you can't have a game that's just achievers. You need a layer of socializers at the bottom who don't actually care that other people are better at the game than them because they're not playing it for going up levels. They're playing it for the people. So there are interactions between the different types. Now, this all works well for virtual. As I was expecting somebody would come up with a better one, like within 6 months, but it seems I hit on one that's actually quite robust. So people started designing virtual worlds with that, these player types. Then it seemed to work for them. Then people took it out into to other games. Now, I can't explain why it would work for other games, only for virtual worlds. But hey, if it does work, well, that's great. I'm not going to complain. It's just that the warranty isn't good for other games. It's only good for virtual worlds. Now, insofar as the metaverse is concerned, player types, well, my player types aren't the only ones out there, because once people saw player types, they thought, well, maybe we can improve it. And there are other ones out there, and some of them have got a dynamism to them, and some of them are more, I can never say the word, statistical measures. So they're categorizations. But frankly, if you're a metaverse person who's trying to push the metaverse, what you're going to do is going to look for something that matches your own particular philosophy and go with that. Whether that's how things really would work or not, you're not going to care, because you just want to back up what you're doing. If you're less superficial than that and you're interested in actually creating a metaverse product, then you'd want to understand, first of all, who's going to be using it, because if you don't understand who's going to be using it, you don't know what to say to them through your design. So if you understand who's using it, then you want some categorization or theory that maps onto your aims. And that could be mine, could be player types. If it's a virtual world like game, it almost certainly would be, because it works. But if it was some kind of game in general, or maybe first-person shooter, so it's not massively multiplayer, it's just multiplayer, then you might want to go with a different one. And in fact, I'd say you should, because I can't guarantee player types for that. So it's up to you. You pays your penny, makes your choice.
But I guess it's probably quite a good foundation to be thinking about a metaverse, right? Or the metaverse, is that we need to create it for all of these different reasons that people will engage. And that's I guess what the promise really has to be for a metaverse, is that you can go there for a multitude of reasons, gaming being one. Where can people go, Richard, to find out more about that, the theory of player types?
Well, they'd probably want to read my 2003 it's a 20-year-old book on the topic, but don't worry, I'm not selling it. I did actually make it free earlier this year. You can just download a copy. Designing Virtual Worlds. It'll be on my website somewhere. Maybe I'll look that up and let you know.
So in conclusion, for people from your background, being in game design and development, what would be your advice for people who are creating their own virtual worlds and contributing to this evolution of the metaverse?
Have something to say. Make sure that you're not doing it for a purely practical reason. If you're making a product that has a functionality to it, the way that you create that product will affect how it's used. And that means that you, the creator, are saying something to the people you're creating it for. It's not just a mechanical, doesn't matter how it looks, doesn't matter how it plays, doesn't matter what it's envisages. I mean, if people can make careers from designing websites, there will be careers from designing virtual worlds. Designers say things to the people for whom they are designing. Make sure you know for whom you are creating this and what you want to say to them through it. And if what you want to say to them is something simple like use this, well, say it through the game design, or the product design. Just make it so that people will wish to use it, that they'll see obviously its benefits. If you say, if we make it, they will come. Well, no, they won't.
Yeah. There's been so many projects that have kind of, come and gone already, within the last few years. And that's a very strong message. And appreciate that for the close, Richard. Really, really a great message. Well, look, we're very excited to be welcoming you in the 24th and 25th of January. And if anyone's listening in, there are tickets available equally for free online right now. So you can join up, learn about this as a topic, learn about the history, the future trajectory, how it's going to impact work, social, and everything in between. So we very much look forward to welcoming you, Richard. Thanks very much for your time, and we'll see you soon.
Bye.